Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Sean from Craft Elements, and in this module of our Resin and Wood Basics series, I'm going to be discussing router templates. Now, router templates are incredibly useful whether you're just using them with wood or using them with wood and resin to create interesting shaped final objects. We have router templates in our case from craftelements.com for things like charcuterie boards or charcuterie board handles. We have router templates to create full things like, these wine serving flight trays, clocks, wine caddies, whatever you could possibly imagine, we probably have a template for it. We actually have over 80 templates currently in our growing line, and we have templates that are both for shaping and doing things like pocketing or inlays. So our shaping templates are designed to create a general shape. So if you take your piece of wood or wood and resin and you want to come up with a final shape, whether it be, in the case of a charcuterie board like this, or, just take your existing board and cut a handle like this, or a handle like this, those are shaping templates, and they are best done using a router table. When you have something like pocketing, like these circles for the wine flight board, or if you're doing these dials on the clock, or if you even want to use things like creating resin and wood inlays, or just resin inlays, or just wood inlays, you can use these bow tie templates, which we have a bunch of different styles of. So these templates can really help you step up your game. They're going to give you professional level results. And again, these templates are optional. These are things that you would kind of, once you get past that, comfort beginner stage of doing resin and wood work, these are really going to help you step up your game. If you do not have a CNC machine, these templates are the next best thing. They will give you CNC-like quality, kind of precision shaping and cutting without the need for an expensive CNC machine. So in this video, I'm going to do some examples of using our templates to create a charcuterie board, a handle, and then doing some inlays as well, so you can see how they work. The tools to use them are really inexpensive and readily available. Let's get started. All right, let's talk about routers and router bits. Of course, to use a router template, you're going to need a router bit, maybe a router table. So I want to really just touch briefly on what those are and what the differences are. So a handheld router is something like this. It's a bigger one, or this, it's a smaller battery operated one. And essentially it is a giant motor with a spindle on it, and it turns a bit such as this very, very fast. You can usually set the RPM, the actual speed at which they spin, to eat away wood and plastic from whatever your surface is. Now in this case, I have it in this router in a plunge mechanism. So it becomes a plunge router. And what that means is it goes up and down like this. It plunges down and goes back up. There's a little spring there. A plunge router is what you would need to do inlays and pocketing. So if you're actually not going all the way through the wood and you're doing something like, a clock dial on one of our clock templates, or like a bow tie or something like that, like a resin backfilled bow tie, you would use a plunge router. You could also use one of these. This is not a plunge router. It is a fixed base router where you set the level and go. Depending on how much material you're eating away, i.e. how deep that bit is going to be, you should be able to get away with this for smaller jobs, smaller inlays. But for something big, definitely get a bigger plunge router. The next thing to talk about is a router table. A router table, literally all it is a tabletop, panel with a hole in it, and then a router, a handheld router, mounted underneath. So it's this mounted underneath a tabletop. I've even seen some people just make their own router table. If they've got a workbench like this, put a hole in it, go underneath with your router, screw your router into the bottom of the tabletop, and you've got a router table. It's really quite simple. Now, a handheld router, a basic one, will set you back less than $100. A router table, again, a basic one is $200. Of course, like anything else in the tool and woodworking world, the sky's the limit. You can get really high-end, really powerful ones. That's not the extent we're going to be talking about today, and you certainly don't need those to do things like this. Bits, okay? You've got your router, you're going to need bits, vast majority of the time, where you're going to be shaping a piece. So you're going to be making a handle or a full charcuterie board or a wine caddy. You're basically using one of our shaping templates to create a shape. You're going to be using your router table, and you're going to be using a flush trim bit. A flush trim bit, in all simplicity, is a bit like this. This is a bigger one, so I wouldn't recommend you use this one. I'll tell you why in a second. But there's a bearing, and that bearing is the same diameter as the bottom piece, which is the actual set of blades. Those are the blades that are they're gonna go through your material, whether it be wood or wood and resin, and that bearing is what's gonna ride along the template. And I'm gonna obviously show you up close how that actually comes together. Now I say don't use this one. I think this is, what size is this guy? It's a 1/2 inch. Okay, you can get away with this for basic shaping if your shapes don't have a lot of inner corners. But typically with router templates, you're going to have an actual inner corner. So like, you know, where 2 lines come together, and that might be a greater diameter than the diameter on the router template. Most of our router templates are designed to use with 1/4 inch bits. So something like these. These are both flush trim bits here. Okay, that's a 1/2 inch. You can see that's much bigger in diameter than this. And these are going to better go around the curves of the templates that we have on our line, because they are made to accommodate bits of this diameter. They are, of course, have 1/8 inch diameter bits as well. You probably don't need to get that small and precise for the vast majority of the shaping work. The 1/4 inch bit will be fine. The next set of bits I want to talk about are the inlay bits, or the pocketing bits, and there's a few of these here. These are actually all from Amana Tool. Amana Tool makes a ton of different bits in terms of router bits and CNC bits, so they're a good source to get these things from. Of course, you can get them from Amazon as well in some capacity, but I find that these inlay bits, these quality inlay bits, really don't exist on Amazon, so these are actually directly from Tools Today, I believe. But anyway, the inlay bits are very much similar to the flush trim bits that we talked about a second ago that are used with the router table, except they are really, really short blades or blade sets on them, right? And the purpose of that is so you can actually, you know, put that in your router, go down and use this bearing on the inside of the template and not have to take out a huge amount of material at a time. If this bit had a really long blade on it, it probably wouldn't even work, right? Because you'd end up putting it down into your template. A, it's probably too deep for what you need, and B, you're going to end up with your router probably just jamming up because it's not enough power to eat that much material and mill out that much material right away, right? So that's the entire point of having these short blade router trim bits. So here's a 3/16 bit, with a really, really tiny bearing on it. That would be good for things like doing bow tie inlays, or inlays that are really, really fine and have really fine corners on the inside, right? So if you didn't have a broad radius on an inside corner, that's the kind of bit you would use. These two bits are actually identical. These are 3/8 inch diameter bits, and of course they've got bearings as well. Also inlay bits, and the difference between them is just the length of the blade shaft, right? So this is a shorter version, this is a longer version. And these are good for pocketing, doing bow ties, doing the clock faces, the clock dial faces, and things like that. This last guy is a 1/2 inch diameter router bit. Again, has your bearing for going along your template, but the difference with this one is that it has a radius blade on it, which means the pocketing it's going to create is going to have not a 90-degree corner or angle. It's going to be a nice rounded corner. So if you're creating like a bowl-like effect, or if you're milling out a bowl, and you want to actually have like a soft corner, this is the bit that you're going to use there. So these flush trim bits here actually came as a kit from Amazon. I will say one thing about the Amazon bits is that they are relatively inexpensive, but they do not last that long. This is a 5/16, this is a 1/4 inch, and I think this is a 3/8. So really the 1/4 inch is something you're going to use for most of the shaping. I've got a 5/16 in here. The reason I've got the 5/16 in here is because it has a longer blade set. If you notice with this this 1/4 inch bit, that's like a 3/4 inch shaft, right? So like it's only going to be able to shape material that's at most 3/4 inch thick, whereas this I think is 1.25 inches when it's fully out of the table. So this is going to allow you to do shaping on, you know, inch and 1/4 thick material, right? So that's one other thing you have to consider. This and these are, again, these are a set of 3 from Amazon. They're relatively inexpensive. Here is the Amana Tool bit, and it's a downcut spiral bit, and it is a 1/4 inch. It is a beautiful bit, but it's very expensive. I think it's like $40 or $50 or something like that, whereas this entire pack is like $20. But you get what you pay for here, right? Like this is a bit that's going to last much, much longer. And of course it does have that inch and 1/4 depth to it. So you're going to be able to use that with thicker material. Here is a Freud bit. Freud obviously is known for their router bits as well. And the cool thing about this one is that it is a double-ended bearing bit. So it's actually got bearings on the top and bottom. So you could use your template on the bottom or top. So you could use the template here, put your wood up here and use this versus these bits, which all have the bearings on the top, which means your template has to be on top of your material. The very first thing I'm going to demonstrate is using one of our shaping templates. So this is actually our fishtail charcuterie board template, and it actually matches our fishtail mold. So we actually do have the line of templates, of course, but we have templates as well that match the interiors of our silicone molds. So if, let's say, you want to create a wood and resin hybrid piece within one of our molds, you could use this to create and cut and shape the wood to exactly fit that silicone mold. So if you want to take a small section of wood, you'd cut that and you put it right into our mold, then backfill the rest with resin. So that's what these templates are good for, but of course you can also use them for shaping in general. You don't have to use them with our molds. And this is a cool fishtail shape. When you get your template from us, or pretty much anyone else, it'll be covered in a paper or plastic coating, and you just got to peel that all off. Probably goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. You, of course, don't have to peel that paper off the template. It's really just for protecting it from getting scratched in shipping. But the advantage, of course, of having the crystal clear acrylic router templates like this is that you're going to actually be able to preview exactly what your final piece is going to look like because you've got a clear template. So that, you know, if you cut this, you're going to have a knot there. If you do this, you're not going to have a knot there, right? So this is all some things you have to consider whether you want to take that paper off or not, but it's completely up to you. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is trace the lines. You're going to hold down your template really, really well and trace the entire template. The reason we're doing this is because we want to rough cut around these lines. By rough cut, I mean we don't need to be really precise. We want to stay a 1/16 to a 1/4 inch away from these lines. And we can cut this with a bandsaw or a jigsaw or a scroll saw. I'm going to do both. I'm going to show you how to use both tools in this video just to cover all our bases. But yeah, so we've got our tracing done. Let's go cut the rough shape out. And all right, so bringing this back to our table, you can see that we've cut outside that line a 1/16 to a 1/4 inch because the entire point of that is that once you put the template on here, the router table is actually what's going to do the rest of the work. So you're going to need to affix the template to your piece. Well, how do you do that? There's really 3 different methods. We've got the 2-sided tape method, and this is just simple 2-sided tape. You cut it, you stick it in different places on your piece, and then you put your template down. I don't really use this method too often because I find at least the 2-sided tape I have access to is harder to get off the acrylic templates. It comes off the wood easy, but it just kind of sticks to the acrylic templates. But there are definitely 2-sided tapes that are low tack options. The next option is the masking tape and CA glue method. So I'm going to really quickly demonstrate this for you. This is not really a method I often use. I stick to the hot glue method, but just quickly to demonstrate, you would cover your variety of areas with your tape like this. You would then create generally matching areas on the other side of your template. In this case, it's a symmetrical template, so we can get away with doing it this way. Right, so now the tape on this template lines up with the tape here. And what you can do is you can use your super glue or CA glue on here, on here, on here, on here. Put it down. If you want, you can spray an activator on. So an activator will just make that super glue set faster. And then affix the template that way. Effectively, you are creating your own version of 2-sided tape, except the tape is something you created, right, with regular 1-sided tape and CA glue. I don't do this method typically. It's not that it's a bad method, it's actually quite a good method. You get very, very little gap between your piece and the template. I just found it a little bit tedious. I've never had the hot glue method fail me, and it's really easy to clean up the hot glue and set it up, of course. So I'm going to show you that method right now. Hot glue method, as implied, uses hot glue, and what I find at least is the surface of your unfinished piece and the template make really, really good candidates for a general adhesion. So it's going to be strong enough to hold it there, but don't expect it to sit there for hours, which is good because it's going to be really easy to pry off, which is why I really like this method. So I'm going to just use a few dabs of hot glue, and keep in mind this is going to be something you have to do quickly. You can't, dibble dabble. You're going to want to come and place your template right away, making sure you've placed it so that it's not outside of the edge of any of your cut lines. And there you go. So our template's on there. It's on with hot glue. It's not going anywhere on the router, but it'll be easy to pry off. Walking this over to our router table, I've already got a 5/16 inch router flush trim bit in there that's been lined up. So the top bearing of our router bit is going to line up generally with the template, and then the blade, we want to have enough, obviously a tall enough blade, a thick enough blade to cut the material we're cutting. So you can obviously make a little bit of adjustment from here with the bottom of from the other side of your router table to move it up or down, but I think that's probably good. We've got enough blade coverage and we've got good template coverage there to start this process. All right, so we're ready to turn our table on. Our blade's going to spin this way, so we want to make sure we're always going against the blade. If you go this way, if the blade's spinning, this way, and you're going that way, you have a chance of having this thing run away on you. So you always want to go against the turn of the blade. Bringing the board back to the desk and just getting a tool to pry off the template. Comes off really easy, that's why I like the hot glue method. And then that hot glue can just scrape off here. Now, in case it's not clear, the shaping is something you're going to do between, for example, if you were casting a wooden resin piece. The shaping is something you're going to do after taking out your wood and resin from your mold and planing it so it's straight, but obviously before sanding. You're going to shape before, basically the shaping happens right before sanding, if that's not obvious. All right, there you go. You can see how using that router template allowed us to create a basically perfect duplicate of that board. So what I want to do now is integrate an inlay into this, just for the sake of showing you how to do it, and using one of our inlay templates. I'm going to peel my paper off this template. So this is a version of our butterfly or bow tie templates. Butterflies and bow tie templates can be used for creating, of course, resin inlays. So creating a pocket, filling it with resin, or you can actually use it for structural applications. So if you had a large knot in a piece of wood, you could use one of these templates to create the pocket, the same template and the proper inlay trimming bit. Not one of the bits I mentioned earlier in this video, but something like the white side 9500 inlay bit, which will allow you to create a actual piece of wood that you could take out and go right into your female pocketed version of that. So if you wanted to create, say, a walnut inlay in a maple board or vice versa, you could use these inlay templates for that. But in this case, I'm actually just going to do a resin backfill strictly for decorative purposes. Okay, so we're ready to place our template. Let's arbitrarily say that it's going to go on the bottom left, and it's kind of that's kind of funny because it's a funky angled butterfly, and it's going to match the funky angled board. So choosing the size, I'm saying, yeah, let's choose this middle size here. So I'm going to again use my hot glue method to hold it down, line up where I'm going to put that inlay. And in this case, we're going to use a plunge router or handheld router with an inlay bit. pocketing bit to pocket out this section. And now this would be a good example to mention where they have really kind of sharp inner corners. The outer corners make no difference, right? Because this bit, for example, is going to glide over that no problem. However, when it comes to the inner corners, that bit doesn't quite match, make it all the way right into the inside. So it's still going to look okay. It's just not going to have that exact same radius. So it's really up to you, depending on how accurate you want to get. If you want to exactly match what's in the template, you'll need to use a narrower bit, or you could just use something like this. And then just not worry about having such defined corners. So I'm going to go ahead and just use our regular inlay bit here. That's thicker than this. It's going to get a quicker job done, and it's still going to look really cool. That was pretty easy, right? Pocket's done. We'll just pry this off the wood. And there you go. You've got your pocketed area that we're going to backfill with resin. I've mixed up some Maker Epoxy from Total Boat, which is a thick, relatively fast setting resin. It sets in 12 to 24 hours. It's going to be perfect for doing a shallow little inlay like this. The one thing you have to decide before you actually pour that is, are you going to over pour it, i.e. do you want the resin to spill out? Because if you do, you're either going to have a lot of sanding, or you're going to have to plane the entire thing to make it level. So I'm going to drill that point home. Here's an over poured inlay. So you can see it was just kind of filled up. This is a cloth that I filled up, and the resin has kind of gone all over. But once I run this through a planer, it's all going to be nice and level, nice and clean, one level. However, if you didn't want to have to use a planer and you want to have to do minimal sanding, then do something like this. You can see, in this case, the resin was just filled up, not quite to the top of the wood, and it kind of domes out and creates something really, really nice. This is not going to require any sanding or planing. I will probably sand the entire piece here, but the actual resin is not going to require any sanding or planing. So yeah, those are two options: to overfill, or to fill right to the top, or to go below. Completely up to you, depending on how much finishing work you do, or rather want to do. In my case, I want to just do, for this example, a minimum amount of work. I don't want to have to run it through the planer. So I'm going to fill it up just enough to get a good fill, but not overfill it. All right, for this second demonstration, I'm going to be using one of our charcuterie board handle templates. This particular template is called the Organic Small Template. It's pretty popular amongst our customers. It's been well used, as you can probably see. Every single one of our handle templates has line markers every 1/4 inch and a center point, so it's really easy to line up on your wood or wooden resin piece. This piece is a walnut blue and white resin piece that I pulled out of one of our 16 by 6 inch charcuterie board silicone molds a couple of weeks back. We typically keep a bunch of these pre-finished pieces here for doing demonstrations like this, so that's where it's from. And it's already been pre-planed, so it's gone through the planer, it's been leveled, hasn't been sanded. Once we actually shape it, we can sand it and finish it, and that's what we're going to do now. So just like before, you're going to want to line up that template and create a tracing, depending on where you want it to go. Benefit of the clear templates is that you can physically see what your actual piece is going to look like before you even cut it, because it's clear. All right, so you've got our tracing done here, and we're going to go and cut a rough shape, keeping away from those lines, 1/16 or 1/4 inch, and we'll come back and attach the template and router it. want to adjust the router and router bit so that the bit is gliding along the router template. This is a thinner piece of material than the last piece we worked on, which is why we've got it lowered a little bit. Take that template off, get rid of the excess glue. All right, and that shape is done. That really nice organic handle shape. So what we're going to do now is actually we're going to change out the router bit to a round over bit and round all these edges to make it nice and smooth so we can get it ready for sanding. So I've grabbed our round over bit. This is not a template bit, but it's a bit for giving your material, your project, a nice rounded edge. I think this is a 1/4 inch radius here. So once I install that on the router table, we'll be able to get a nice round edge on our entire board. Now this is not a video on sanding or finishing, so I'm just going to quickly sand and finish this board and get right to it. If you want to learn more about sanding and finish options for these wooden and wooden resin projects, we definitely have a module in this series for that. I'm just going to apply some Total Boat Wood Honey, which is a Total Boat liquid product. And you can see it just really makes that wooden resin pop. We're going to let this sit for 20 minutes or so and then come back and polish it all off. And that nice oil finish will be absorbed into the wooden resin. For the last demonstration of this video segment on router templates, we're going to look at our clock template. We have these in 12, 16, and 18 inch. And this particular template is good to do a demo on because it is both a shaping template and an inlay template. The shaping being the circle part, right, the exterior shape, and then the inlay being these clock dials, which we do with your inlay or pocketing bit. So I actually made this clock last week, so I'm going to insert that segment now so you can see just how using this template can help you make things like this. Something worth mentioning before we finally end this video is strictly the amount of mess that routers and router tables make. It creates a huge amount of dust and debris. Obviously, if you've got a vacuum system in your shop, that will take care of that. I have one here, but it's not hooked up to my router table. It's for all the other tools. So it just generally makes a huge mess. So just keep in mind that you will end up making a mess. So you want to do it in your garage or outside, or maybe in your basement if you've got a controlled area that's easy to clean. Just food for thought, because this is something you don't want all over your house. Well, that's officially a wrap on our templates video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative. I hope you learned something. And above all, I hope you got some spark of creativity to go out and check out our website, craftedelements.com, and see if there's any templates there that would help you create your next dream project. Again, a couple of key takeaways is that when using these router templates, you want to use one of the three hold down methods, whether you use two-sided tape, the CA glue and masking tape method, or hot glue. And of course, you want to use either a router table with a flush trim router bit, or if you're doing inlays and pockets, you're going to want to use a handheld router or a plunge router with the appropriate inlay or pocketing bit. And again, we did list those model numbers from some of the Amana tool products earlier in this video. If you did enjoy this video and you want to learn more about using resin and wood to make things like this, make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube and hit that like button. This component video, or rather this module, is part of a larger resin and wood basics series. So if you're just getting started and doing things like this, you'll want to watch the entire series from start to finish. There's 10 or 11 modules, and we go over every single thing you would need to know about going from raw wood to finished product. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. Again, make sure you head over to craftedelements.com if you want to shop your own router templates like these, as well as check out our line of large format silicone maker molds. Wait, you made it all the way to the end of this video, which means you get an exclusive 10% discount on anything from craftedelements.com or totalboat.com. All you need to do is enter coupon code ERWBVS at checkout. That's ERWBVS. This coupon code is going to get you an instant 10% discount on any of the time-saving molds, templates, or tools at craftedelements.com, or head over to totalboat.com and use the code to get some amazing epoxy resin at a 10% discount.